We awake with big plans on the dusty plains of Arrakis for part 12 of our Dune Awakening survival journey completely alone. This time, after some brief preparations, we are finally crossing the line into the deep desert, where a monumental task awaits. Let's go. We begin with a quick rundown to the Sheol, grabbing some more jasmium crystal. Though we're going to be starting on Plastanium today, we've still got some upgrades to make around the base to bring production and storage up, so we're going to need to get some more duraluminum. After that, we went from the skies of Arrakis to the bowels, as we need some more erithite crystal. We are almost completely dry on cobalt paste, and I'll be honest, I've been kind of neglecting it, just because of how slow and cumbersome the buggy is, but needs must. So I dragged myself and the hunk of metal on wheels down into the rift, getting around 2500 crystals. We'll probably need more in the future, but that's a concern for, well, the future.
I'm scared. What is going on? Get me out of here, get me out, get me out.
After shaking the flashbacks from the last time we crashed in that exact same spot, I headed out to get some spice with varying levels of success. With the spice cooking, I returned to the Sheol a little later, this time to gather up some extra resources. However, I found a rather pleasant surprise in the form of an abandoned base. I decided to claim it for myself, finding tons of jasmium inside and an intact buggy, which should help a bit with farming some extra duraluminum. After carting back thousands of jasmium, I think we need an assault thopter, especially for the deep desert. Our hangar is a little small, so we're going to extend it out and widen it so that we've got more than enough room. With the hangar complete and our duraluminum cooked, let's get that assault thopter built. With our assault complete, we've just got a huge buff to our farming abilities, and it's time to use it. Now, let's go north. We are finally here, and within only a couple of minutes I've already laid my eyes on some of the oh so valuable nodes we're looking for. I threw up a fast and kind of ugly cube base just to keep us safe from the storms, and we are now a proud owner of a box in the deep desert. As we finally began to chop up our first bits of titanium and stravidium mass, two things dawned on me. The first was that this was likely going to be the longest grind so far. I got quite lucky with the timing of my arrival to the deep desert. The most recent patch had vastly increased spawns of stravidium and titanium in the PvE zones, making actually finding these nodes much easier. That is the easy part, but the sheer amount of manual labour that goes into making Plastanium as a solo is going to be a real grind, and there's no way around it other than doing the actual work of mining, refining and crafting. The second thing that dawned on me is that I'd forgot my survey probe. I know, professional. I flew around and managed to find a cave and went inside to get my hands on some parts to craft a new probe.
Jesus.
Something tells me I may be a bit undergeared, but we just about survived. We got what we were looking for alongside some thermoelectric coolers, a nice bonus. After farming up some more nodes and running a couple of caves, I had a decent little chunk of tier 6 resources and headed back home to craft them up. I know it's probably going to be easier in the long run to craft them in the deep desert, but I do want to get just a feeling for how the process works before carting a bunch of infrastructure here. Back home, we got the stravidium fibre cooking, and while I waited, I zoomed over to a few unconquered enemy outposts to nab some intel points, as I've got a disturbing lack of those at the moment. After our little trip around Arrakis, we returned home and with the Stravidium fibre, cooked up our very first Plastanium ingots. Obviously, outfitting the entire base and all my gear with Plastanium is going to take a long time, but for this episode our goals are quite simple. At least 3 Plastanium machines and a Plastanium stillsuit. Humble goals for now, but ones that will help us out a lot. While we waited for that first batch to cook, I headed back to the deep desert and grabbed another load of materials, and after cooking up another batch of fibre we had another set of Plastanium on the go. Now before we get some more, I do think it's unfortunately time to retire the Mark IV Scout. It's served us well, but it's beyond time to upgrade to the Mark V and get some extra speed and efficiency out of our light Thopter. With our new Mark V Scout, things are feeling a lot more nimble, so we packed it up and returned back to our haunt in the deep desert. Getting back to the grind, I decided on a bit of a different approach. Rather than dragging the assault everywhere, I'll leave the assault Thopter back at base for cargo, and instead I'll zip zoom around in the Scout, farming up titanium and stravidium. I'm not sure this is mathematically faster. The assault can obviously carry more, but the Scout is just objectively faster and more nimble in moving around. It feels faster and a bit nicer to me, but I'm not too concerned about the utmost efficiency just yet. Between hopping in now to the Thopter to carve up some rocks, I also stopped off at various caves to get extra resources and some of those thermoelectric coolers. These side ventures had mixed results.
Oh, I'm dead.
I also ventured off the shield wall and a bit deeper into the further off sectors of the deep desert. There wasn't really a whole ton for me here on the first look. The islands had about the same amount of stravidium titanium as the shield wall, and any testing stations or shipwrecks were a bit outside of my reach at the moment, given that we're running around in a stillsuit with Mark IV and Mark V weapons. I do want to tackle the testing stations at some point and get the resources and recipes, but that will have to be something for the future. After filling up on the resources, it was back home to cook up even more of the good old Plastanium. Returning to the deep desert again, I finally bit the bullet and brought in a bit of infrastructure, enough to process stravidium mass in the field. I was trying to see if I could avoid this for now, as the date of recording was a Saturday, so reset wasn't too far off, but it is just going to make life so much easier that it's basically worth the extra time spent working out the logistics. Turns out that a lot of deep desert farming is exactly that, logistics. Fortunately, there are quite a few build calculator sites that are really helpful in planning this out, and as the base gets updated and optimised, I can keep resaving it in my Solido replicator so that next week I don't have to remember exactly how I built everything. Whilst farming, I went out even further, and we found our first deep desert shipwreck, a great source of rare tier 6 components, schematics, items and more. I've had some practice with these recently, so I'm far less apprehensive of cutting them open than I was prior. Well, I'm a little disappointed we didn't get the last compartment, but the loot we got was pretty decent. A good few rare resources, the Sandcrawler engine schematic, which won't really be much for us as a solo, but might sell for a nice chunk of Solari. We'll definitely have to keep an eye out for more of these, the loot is far too good to ignore. While we were out and about, I spotted 2 more shipwrecks. The first was troublesome. The small hatch was seemingly bugged and inaccessible, and the side one, well. The second wasn't bugged, but the worm was definitely not happy with me rifling around, so he sent me packing pretty quickly, leaving our loot to be devoured by the hungry worm. Seeing as we now had a bit of water infrastructure in the deep desert, making stravidium fibre in the field was really speeding up the Plastanium grind, so I spent a bit of time farming any caves I could. I'm looking for basically any deep desert resources I can find, water tubes especially, as we do need those for the Mark VI stillsuit. On our travels, I also found a shipwreck POI not marked for PvP. I'm not sure why, there was a control point nearby, so maybe it cancelled out the shipwreck. I'm not going to waste too much time asking questions, I simply ran in, grabbed the loot, and left. I'd also heard good things about buried treasure in the deep desert and how useful they can be for these rare resources I need. Well, I tried and failed to find some for quite a while, and eventually managed to happen on 3 within the space of about 2 minutes. Though I was a bit dubious at first, the loot from these is solid, not quite as good as the crash ships, but certainly worth looking for. Speaking of which, I managed to find 2 crash ships nearby, and ended up having to play the inventory management minigame the whole time. My pockets were heaving with loot at this point. With our avenues of getting pretty much everything we need in the deep desert now clear, I put pedal to the metal and simply just grinded it out. Over the next day or so, it was just a ton of farming, cutting open every shipwreck and digging up any buried treasure I can find, regularly returning to Hagga Basin and refining batch after batch of Plastanium until we had enough. After many hours spent farming and carting around materials, digging up buried treasure after buried treasure, weekly reset crept up and we deconstructed our deep desert base and headed home. While here, it's time to make some very important upgrades. Firstly, I added some directional wind turbines for extra power in the grid, and then built our first Plastanium machine, the Advanced Survival Fabricator, allowing us to craft deep desert components at home. Upstairs, I then replaced our single spice refinery with a medium, which is going to help greatly with that precious melange. Lastly, we built an advanced garment fabricator, and after much grinding we were missing just one thing: melange. Hagga Basin was dry, and now there was only one solution. There is no avoiding it anymore. It's time to enter the PvP zone. I am admittedly a bit nervous about it, but I'm hoping that any guilds will overlook my pitiful little ornithopter in favour of better plunder elsewhere. I was heading for the large spice field on the horizon until I got a bit scared, so chose the medium field instead. I was hoping the large spice blow would give me a bit of breathing space, attracting all the actual PvP players so I could harvest my medium spice in peace. After a surprisingly quiet time, we escaped the jaws of the sandworm and the rocket pods of the PvPers with just over 3,700 spice sand. Not bad at all for a frankly uneventful first run. Hopefully it stays that way. Back in Hagga Basin, something strange had begun to happen. The sky was lit up with rockets and artillery, and pretty much everywhere I looked there were cannons firing off in every given direction. What is going on? These installations had a couple of guys, some small shipwreck resources, and chome cargo, whatever that is. Turns out the artillery seems to be shooting down ships. I went over to the shield to grab some more spice, but found tons of these newly crashed ships, different from the usual ones. The worms were in an absolute frenzy too, with more shipwrecks to eat than they really knew what to do with. Turns out you can hand in chome cargo at the anvil for some cosmetics, and apparently there's some new contracts too, though that's something for another day. Finally, after hoovering up the spice in Hagga Basin and picking through the far northern spice fields of the deep desert under the cover of night, we fired up the old spice refinery once more, creating a whole bunch of the precious melange, and put it to use in the advanced garment fabricator to craft our Plastanium stillsuit, including the unique Pardo's hood. And finally, just like that, we're done. 3 Plastanium tier machines and our chome Plastanium stillsuit. Of course, this isn't the end of the grind for us. There's still plenty of spice and Plastanium to farm if we truly want to get everything upgraded, but for this episode our goals are complete. Over the course of 180 hours we've gone from new blood dropped onto the unforgiving planet of sand and worms, to carving out our own piece of Arrakis and thriving in spite of it. As for what lies ahead, the plan was to take a bit of a break from this series until something new comes out, as frankly, episode after episode of farming the deep desert won't be that interesting. However, as things have turned out, by the time you're watching this, the Chapter 2 update and Lost Harvest DLC will have been released, so we will return in the very near future to find out what secrets and stories await us in the sands of Arrakis. As you well know by now, we'll be doing all of that and more completely solo. Thank you for watching, and a massive thanks to our wonderful esteemed coffee cultists for continuing to support the channel over on Patreon. If you want to get the next episode and more videos early alongside wallpapers, blueprints and other perks, check the Patreon link in the description to support the channel directly. Take care, and I'll see you soon.